Hello and welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, and my co-host Justin Baker and I continue our top 10 best players from every franchise across the National Hockey League. We've got 3 teams left, and today is the infamous Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm excited for this list. I don't know about you, Justin, but this is a very different list than a lot of teams because they really haven't done very much in the history of their team.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, you really think about it. You look at the franchise; they've only had a few marquee players, right? And they've pretty much throughout their entire history since the early 2000s, they've been known as a team that really doesn't score a lot of goals, right? So, you know, they don't have a lot of guys in their history that have been big point producers.
Yeah, and they have only won one playoff round, and it was last year, and they lost in the second round pretty handedly. So it's there's not a whole lot to, like, you can't look at playoff stats and go, oh, well, you know, this particular guy deserves to be on the list because of his incredible playoff runs. I mean, you only have 2 players that have more than, or 3 players that have more than 15 points in the playoffs. There just has not been very many guys with playoff games. There are 5 players with 27 playoff games, and those 5 guys are the franchise leaders in playoff games. So,
yeah, I still remember the first time they ever made the playoffs. Right, it was such a big deal, and then they got absolutely stomped by the Detroit Red Wings. It was an embarrassment.
They got swept, right?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. I think they went to overtime one game.
Yeah, it was not pretty though,
and
that's for sure.
That was about the best that they did. Okay, well, with that said, I'll just say this now. Nobody just missed my list because I struggled to put 10 players on my list. So I don't have anybody beyond that. So I'm going to throw it to you. If you have anybody that just missed your list, please let us know.
I do have one player, actually, and maybe it's my love for this position, but Steve Mason is on my just missed.
Okay, all right. Yeah, won the Calder Trophy.
Yes.
I mean, I guess in some sense you could say that he just something in my list because he's number 10 on my list. So he just made my list as opposed to just missing it.
That's beautiful.
And to be honest, like he makes it. He's the only player to win a Calder Trophy for the Columbus Blue Jackets, and he's really one of very few players who have actually won a trophy for the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to point out. There's not too much hardware in the cabinets there in Columbus.
You've got Vezina Trophy and Maurice Rocket Richard Trophy, and that is it.
And that one was shared.
Yes, that one was shared with 2 other people. Okay, well, obviously I've said my number 10. I mean, just to toss out some Steve Mason statistics while we're on him. He didn't really he's probably the least winningest goaltender to appear on any of our lists so far. He did play in 232 games for this team. He only won 96 of them, and he won a Calder Trophy. So he's the second most winningest goaltender in Columbus Blue Jackets history. I think there's a chance that, you know, if Korpisalo stays as their goaltender for a little bit, that he could surpass those 2 guys, or the 2 guys ahead of him, Mark Denis and Steve Mason. But not a whole lot of pickings in terms of good goaltenders. But there you go. That's Steve Mason, and your number 10.
All right, my number 10, a guy sitting 5th all-time in franchise points, and that's R.J. Umberger. A lot of people might know him a little bit better for his Philadelphia days, but this guy was just a beast in terms of a power forward type center. He was large and in charge for sure, and always went hard to the net. And even though he ended up finishing out his career as a Flyer, he did have some okay seasons as a Columbus Blue Jacket. Ended up playing the most of 6 seasons there, never really topping more than 57 points. But again, he wasn't he wasn't like your number one guy, but he was more of like a number 2-3 center that just did his job very well, and he was good at both ends of the ice.
Yeah, he scored 20-plus goals 4 years in a row for the Blue Jackets. So that's worth taking into account, too.
I will say, though, I mean, you talk about the goals he scored, and you look at the assists, and to be quite honest, even putting up 30 assists on a team at a time when literally they had no one to pass to was kind of impressive, actually.
Yeah, Rick Nash had left, and I mean, with Umberger in 2000. Now, in his first year with Columbus, he was 64th in Selke Trophy voting. So
64th.
I can't believe that it goes back that far. Does that mean that one person voted for him? So basically, the Columbus Blue Jackets writer voted for him for the Selke. I mean, how else do you get voted that far down for the Selke? Yes, he had one vote. Other players with one, that was a fifth place vote. One fifth place vote for the Selke. Other players with a fifth place vote that year. Stefan Yell for the Boston Bruins as a 34-year-old. Stephen Weiss for the Panthers. Ian LaPerriere for the Avalanche, and Michael Hanzus.
Wow!
So those
are some names.
Collection of some beautiful names in that spot. Let's just skip ahead to your number 9. Who do you got number 9?
Yeah, number 9, the current captain of this team, and that is Nick Foligno.
Okay, second all time in score. Is that second all time in scoring?
No, he's third all time.
Third all time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he started off his career obviously in Ottawa, but came over to Columbus and sort of, I don't want to say caught fire, but like the production ramped up pretty quick. You know, year after year, he got better and better. Then all of a sudden had, a slight drop off and then back up to 51 points after a few years. But now the last few seasons, he's kind of lost. I don't want to say lost favor, but he's kind of been put into a sheltered third line penalty kill role with Torts, and you can see the production is reflected. So, but for a guy who's been there for so long and has been a leader inside that locker room, I don't know how you keep him off a list like this personally. But for me, he just comes in at number 9.
He had his 73-point season, and I made a mistake. He is an award winner. He won the King Clancy Award and the Marc Messier Leadership Award in 2016-17. So 2 major awards for Nick Foligno, basically as his work as a captain, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess you got to go around to every franchise eventually. So there you go.
Right? Yeah. Somebody has to sneak in there. Okay, well, he's also my number 9, so that takes care of that.
Perfect.
My number 8 is a guy who was he had an okay history with the Blue Jackets, like okay years with them, kind of checkered a little bit, but ultimately brings in a player who will likely go down as maybe the best, if not one of the best, Columbus Blue Jackets of all time. So for that, I'm going to give him a little bump. My number 8 is Ryan Johansson.
As is mine. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Ryan Johansson is 10th all-time in scoring, in points, at least for this franchise. 309 games. He had 193 points, but he does fetch Seth Jones. So he did this franchise a huge favor. Imagine if Nashville still had Seth Jones.
Jeez. I mean, they churn out defensemen. I don't know how they do it, but man, they find them.
Yeah, and I know that usually you wouldn't put a guy higher on a list based on the fact that who he brought in via trade, but we're doing it this time. Only had 79 goals in 309 games for this team, but he was, before he went to Nashville. There was. It was kind of like, okay, this guy's a goal scorer, because he had 33 goals and then he had 26 goals in 2014-15. So, I mean, he had 2 straight seasons of over 25 goals, and then he drops down to 6 and then 8 and 14. I mean, he hasn't had more than 14 goals since 2014-15. Oh, I'm sorry, 2014. Yeah, since 2014-15. So, he's not exactly a goal scorer anymore.
Not much, no. Fortunately.
You're number 7.
Yeah, number 7. This is a guy who I had a hard time putting further ahead because every list that I looked at there weren't too many to kind of look at, but they had this guy a lot higher on their list, but I personally just couldn't put him any further ahead, and that's Cam Atkinson coming in at number 7 for me.
Okay, all right. Well, yeah, you got him way down. I mean, he is the second highest, not only the second highest point getter, but the second highest goal scorer. He's only 2 goals away from scoring 200. Probably would have scored 200 this year if it hadn't have been for the coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, his production over the last few seasons has been pretty good, and since he began his full-time stint with the Blue Jackets in 13-14, he's put up a minimum of 40 points outside of this shortened season here. Don't get me wrong, he's been an excellent player for them. He's one of the few goal scorers they do have on this team, scoring 35 and 41 goals in 2 different seasons. But to be quite honest, again, it just kind of goes to the guys in front of him on this list that I think are going to be better players, not only in the long term for this franchise, but currently I feel are better players now anyways. So yeah, I just had a hard time bumping him up a little bit further, even though he is second all time in games played and points for this franchise.
And he also does hold the record for most goals in a season. He does share that with Rick Nash. Rick Nash's 03-04 season, but and he has the 5th most goals in a season as well. So I mean, he's got to be on this list. He's slightly higher on my list. I have him at 6.
Okay.
So at number 7, I have a guy who, and maybe you have him on your list just a little bit higher based on some potential, but it's Pierre-Luc Dubois, a guy taken 3rd overall by the Blue Jackets. 158 points. He's obviously not super high up on the points list. He's like 18 or 19, but he's a guy. He's 7th all time in points per game, and he's a guy that I feel like will be there for a long time. And he's somebody who I expect to maybe be higher up on this list as time goes on. But Pierre-Luc Dubois is definitely maybe the best center to ever play for this team.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't disagree with you there. I do have him a little bit higher, mostly because I feel when it's all said and done, he will be probably one of the franchise leaders all time in terms of points if his production stays up the way it has been.
Okay, well, let's go to who do you have at number 7?
Well, number 7 was Cam, but at number 6, I've got a defenseman by the name of Zach Werenski.
All right, yeah, Zach Werenski. Okay, so we've got 3 guys switched around because I have Werenski 5, Atkinson 6, Dubois 7. So you've got Dubois, Werenski, Atkinson.
This is true, yeah. Okay. Dubois comes in at 5 for me, but Werenski, I love his game. He is, one of the few goal scorers in terms of D-men out there. I mean, he's leading the league right now at 20 goals in 60 games played for a defenseman. Not too shabby. I don't ever know if we'll get back to those days of Mike Green where he was putting up 30-plus goals, but I mean, this guy's been just steady in terms of production since he's got there. I mean, it's been 40-point seasons. Doesn't hurt that he gets to play a lot of time with Seth Jones, a guy who I'm hoping appears a little higher on your list. And but he's a rock-solid defenseman. He's good at both ends, and he does, he moves the puck very well, very fluid skater. So I don't know how you can keep him off this list.
Yeah, of course he's on this list. I think Werenski, for me, he's higher than Atkinson and Dubois because I think he has a bigger impact on the ice. He's also played longer than Dubois. Atkinson, well, he's a talented player. I feel like he's not much more than like a decent first line player and a really good second line type of guy. He's a top 6 forward, definitely. If he were on any other team, I don't know where he would appear in the depth chart. But I don't think that he's a guy. He's definitely not a guy that you're looking at the Blue Jackets and you're going like, we're going to plan our entire game plan around Cam Atkinson.
Right.
He's dangerous. He can score from a lot of places on the ice, but he's decent. He's a good top six forward, but in reality, he's on any other franchise, and he doesn't get close to this list.
Very true.
So, I mean, outside of like the Atlanta Thrashers or something like that, but nevertheless, second all time in points and goals. So he's got to be on this list. But Werenski to me he's definitely more talented. He also, I think that in the long run, he's going to do more for this franchise. Cam Atkinson now is into his 30s, and Werenski's got a lot of time. If he sits with this team and stays with this team, he could, move up into the top 10, top 5 for scoring if he's here long enough.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Okay, into the top 4. I think we're going to have the same players in our top 4, but let's see what order we went. Let's go with your number 4.
Number 4 for me is Seth Jones.
Okay. All right. So the best defenseman in franchise history, Seth Jones.
Yeah, when I looked at the guys in front of him, right, I look at what they meant to the franchise and how talented they were. And while I think Seth Jones is definitely going to be a Norris-type defenseman, and he might already be in that conversation already, a lot of people could argue, but I think right now I need a little bit more work from him. I mean, he's such a great puck mover. He's such a great, just like if I had a one-on-one situation, a forward D-man coming down, and I had to pick a defenseman, he would probably be there in the top 5 of guys that I would pick every single time to be there. I mean, that's just how good I think this guy is and can be. So, and again, it's no slight to him being at number 4, but I just honestly, talent-wise and what they've meant to the franchise, I just think the guys ahead of him are a little bit more important. And, after, I would say in a couple of years, obviously, I think Seth Jones will probably jump 1 or 2 of these guys for sure. Okay.
I mean, I have Seth Jones at 3, so we're not too far off of that. I have him at 3. I think going back to the reason that you had Pierre-Luc Dubois a little higher is because we know Seth Jones is going to be here. He's going to be a Blue Jacket for likely a long time. And so that definitely plays a factor. The fact that he's still on this team is a reason to me to have him a pinch higher. He's also the all-time leading defensive point getter for this franchise. And, he was 4th in Norris Trophy voting a few years ago, and he was on the second team All-Star in 2017-18. So he's already been in a position to win a Norris Trophy, and I think that he'll likely be in that conversation most years. As we move forward here. This year he kind of had an injury-riddled season, so it's a little bit easier to kind of forget about him because he didn't play as many games, and it took him a little bit to come back. But I do think that Seth Jones ultimately there is a chance that he could appear very, very high on this list, maybe even number 1, depending on how long he stays with the franchise. But he's my number 3. I have Artemi Panarin at number 4.
Okay, I have him at number 3.
So the reason, first off, of course, points per game, he is the franchise leader. He's got over a point per game, 169 points in 160 games with 55 goals. It's hard to put a guy into the top 3 who only played 2 years with this franchise. Granted, he had some of the best years in terms of points and in terms of like his playoff production. He definitely has probably the best playoff record for this team. Not that that's saying a whole lot, but he does have he's got 18 points in 16 games in the playoffs, 7 goals. He really carried this team on his back in the playoffs. So he definitely deserves to be up here. There's not too many guys that could appear in the top 5 for a franchise and play 2 years there.
Yeah, no, I'll agree with you there. I just personally, when I look at Seth Jones, I need a couple more seasons out of him before I'm ready to put him over Panarin, just because I think Panarin, talent-wise, is probably the most talented skater that this franchise has ever had. And again, too, there's not too many guys either when you look at that have been with this franchise that you can just say these guys are line drivers, right? These are guys that you could put on anybody's top line and they're going to drive production.
Well, Seth Jones.
Well,
Seth Jones, you put on anybody's team and he's going to be a top pairing defenseman.
Yeah, won't disagree with you there. But again, I just think in terms of driving production, driving offense, I think Panarin just has just that slight edge to me. And again, you look at the numbers, I think, when he had the opportunity in the playoffs, he showed up every time. His numbers are great, and the only point per game player that this franchise has ever seen. So for me, I just think talent-wise, he was just slightly better for me, in my opinion, than Seth Jones.
All right, I'm surprised you didn't have Sergei Fedorov on this list then. Or is that,
I thought about it, actually.
Is that still kind of sensitive? Because he left the Red Wings, right?
Yeah, that was ugly, but yeah.
Okay, well, let's go with your number 2 and your number 1. Just go ahead and say them both. Okay. I mean, I know they're going to be the players that I have. We'll just see what order we go.
Yeah, I put Rick Nash at number 2 and Sergei Bobrovsky at number 1, making it 3 teams in a row that a goaltender is number 1.
Yeah, and I mean, both players won awards, but Bobrovsky won 2 as the best player at his position.
Absolutely.
It's hard to ignore that. It's hard not. And the fact that he did it in different, like one of them he won in 12-13, the other one he wins in 16-17. He did this over a long period of time. Like he was there's no doubt he was a top 5 goaltender for 7-8 years, 7-ish years straight with the Blue Jackets. Of course, he's gotten to the Panthers and hasn't had his greatest year, but he's still an incredible goaltender and won those awards. Like he was the best player at his position 2 years, which is more than any other Blue Jackets player can say.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's the reason that you have some playoff appearances for this team, right? He carried this franchise on his back many years. But unfortunately, during the playoffs, he wasn't necessarily the reason why they advanced. He was mediocre for most of those years, although the play in front of him wasn't quite as good either. But up until his final season in Columbus, where they actually beat out the Lightning there, he didn't really have some good playoff stats to look at. So
that is true. Yeah, but they always seem to go up against Pittsburgh.
That's true.
And then Pittsburgh goes and wins cups. So
they do.
what are you going to do there? Yeah, I mean, just Rick Nash, really, he's, for all the talk that we throw Panarin's way in terms of being the most maybe the most talented skater, Rick Nash was just such a different type of player than Panarin, and he came into the league at such a different time, and I mean, really, he does a pretty good job at being able to score goals all throughout his career, despite the game changing pretty drastically over the course of that career. I mean, he comes into the league in 02-03, clutch and grab, hardcore. 03-04, of course, he wins the Richard Trophy. It is interesting. You win the Richard Trophy, so you score the most goals in the NHL, and despite that, he's 25th in Hart Trophy voting that year. 25th. Wow. The other guys who also got Hart Trophy votes that tied with him, a 35-year-old Mark Recchi and a 26-year-old Zdeno Chara for the Ottawa Senators.
Okay.
Yeah, there was that's a. I mean, Andrew Raycroft got 43 votes that year.
Wow.
So that was the year that Martin St. Louis won his first Hart Trophy with 94 points. But anyways, I mean, Rick Nash was such a different player than Panarin, where Panarin, of course, like you look at him now and you go, wow, the guy's so crazy talented. But Rick Nash could just score from anywhere. He used his body so much that he was such a different type of player. And it's so hard to compare the two. For the era that he played in, he was just as good, if not, honestly, better than Panarin because of the goals that he scored. I mean, he had 2 40-goal seasons. He had 5 other 30-goal seasons for this team. I mean, this is a guy who just scored goals nonstop. And then he had a 27-goal season as well. So basically almost a 30-goal season there. So, and he only played 75 games. In 05-06, he only played 54 games and put up 31 goals.
Wow.
I mean, this is a guy who could score the lights out. Something that Panarin isn't really known for. Definitely more of a setup man. And if you look at the way that we value goal scorers, I do think that Rick Nash does get the edge over Panarin. But Panarin also hasn't had the same kind of career that Rick Nash did. Of course, Panarin comes into the league much, much later in his career. So it's hard to compare the two, but I do think Rick Nash, I mean, all-time leader in games played, goals, assists, and points. And is he all-time leader in penalty minutes? No. Fourth all-time in penalty minutes. Good old Jared Bull is number one with almost 1,200 penalty minutes.
Oh, my gosh. There's a fourth-line fighter for you.
Right? There you go. All right. Well, that's our top 10 Columbus Blue Jackets. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
No. I just was excited to put this list together. I think we're winding down here. We got which two franchises left, man?
Yeah, we've got two left: the Calgary Flames and the Arizona Coyotes.
My goodness.
So, almost through all 31 teams, and we'll have to once the Seattle, I don't know, Kraken, whatever they're going to be called, comes in, we'll give them a year or two, and then we'll redo the list. We'll do their list.
Yeah, so you better keep listening.
Right, exactly. All right, well, Justin, enjoy your lockdown, and hey, we'll be back here with the Calgary Flames. Or maybe we should let's do the Arizona Coyotes first, and we'll save the Calgary Flames for last.
There you go.
All right. Thank you for listening. You can find us on Twitter at OT Hockey Talk, and stay safe out there.